Thank you for very interesting insight into the whole problem. I also believe, I just wanted to add to what you are saying, that the problem is actually with the distribution companies. The problem begins from there. But I'm not saying it's a public sector or a private sector. Public sector or the private sector, all of them are to be blamed. And that is where, because the problem is, like in UP, I don't know, many people would know here, that out of 3.54 crore households that UP has, only 1.6 crores, they have the connections. The rest of the people are actually stealing electricity. So what you need to do is, and the per capita consumption is much low, much below the national average. So if you increase the size of the pie, if you increase the per capita consumption, if you reduce the losses, you reduce the theft, then the size of the pie will increase so much that it will solve the problem of everybody. The distribution companies, the transmission companies, and even the power producers.
Yeah.
Today, the problem is too much on the rates, you see, because we are not talking of this, we are only talking of the stressed assets of the power producers. But much bigger problem today, and that you will going to face in coming years, like in UP, I know that some of the private producers who are there, they are in the merit order, they are already getting out, so there has to be thermal backing to be done, and they are not able to supply power. So therefore, unless you increase the size of the pie and make it actually, as Mr. Akhilesh was saying yesterday, that you actually bring it closer to the market prices, and that can be only done by the distribution companies, not the only private, but also the public sector. And then only this problem probably can be mitigated.
Sir, can I just add to what you said? In Delhi, there are 5.4 million.
No, I'm not saying
No,
that.
no.
You have done very well.
No,
I
I'm not
know
talking
that.
of that. I'm just saying 5.4 million consumers between the three distribution utilities. 100% billed. There's not a single consumer who's not billed. Collection efficiency is 100%. And every year, there is a regulatory gap of 3,000 crores that is created. Is that, whose fault is it? I don't know.
Yeah, that I agree. That actually is the problem.
Okay, sorry for walking up because two important points came up here which are very important for this conference, which I, with your permission of the chair, I wanted to just point out. Both were brought up by Gopal, and he has just, as usual, gummed it into a very diplomatic discourse, as he must. One is, how do you get out of old PPAs, which are, as somebody said, the prices are no longer viable, even for government distribution companies, not just for private. And the second is the regulatory asset issue. I just want to quickly rewind back to 2002. We were doing a conference on sanctity of contract, rule of law, and we have a master class on Sunday, and we hope to have some good lawyers talking about it. And I remember Mr. Chidambaram then, sorry, I beg your pardon, Mr. Jaitley had come, and we had a sitting judge of the High Court who was also there. And the sequence of event went something like this. The judge said, sanctity of contract, rule of law will be observed in full spirit as per the Contract Act. We will observe it. The next person happened to be the law minister, who said, sanctity of contract, rule of law is fine, but we also have Specific Relief Act 63. You can always go and ask for specific reliefs. The chairman of the Central Electricity Regulatory Commission said, listen, contracts are fine, sanctity is fine, as long as there's no malafide in the PPA. See the counters changing. The chairman of the State Regulatory Commission then said, we as regulators have entitlement to open the PPA in public interest. Then stood up the principal of the Bangalore Law School that time, who said, ladies and gentlemen, at the heart of this problem lies the fact that we follow English jurisprudence. And in English jurisprudence, the heart is, I have every right, or I have as much right to enforce my contract as I have to renege on my contract as long as I make a profit. The fundamental problem is we must look at profit. And there, a public distribution company, whether or even if it is Gopal doing interacting with the consumer, is always going to have this problem of justifying. How does he declare a profit? Because it is perceived that, sorry Gopal, I am also a part citizen of Delhi and your consumer and I pay exorbitant bills to you also. It's perceived that, sorry for the language, private sector to chor hai. ये चोरी करते रहते हैं. So you're right. Public perception is the main issue. So your idea of getting all distribution companies publicly listed would be a great idea. But would anybody agree? A. The second point you raised, and I want to again flag this issue so you can open it to debate, is this business of regulatory assets. Where in the Electricity Act is there a provision for regulatory assets? Can someone explain to me? I have not understood the story. If there is a provision, please tell me in which section. And second, you are the expert, you can always tell us, is how do they get liquidated? And by when? Because the bankers, whenever I chat with them, they say, bhai, theek hai, I can understand you have a regulatory asset, I understand, but when are you going to repay me back? Question to you, Gopal, since you raised it. No way, Jose? So you can't get your money back. Okay. So the answer is then to go the other way around. Nationalize all private sector. Let government keep funding it. Zindabad. I leave it open. Questions, answers, reactions. Yes, sir. First question, second question. Mike's quick, action. Ek piche bhi dena.
I am Pranav Mehta from the National Solar Energy Federation of India, which is a great supporter of this IPI event, bringing us all together to reflect on the real situations. I think we need to look at facts first. Fact number one, pendulum has shifted too much in favor of large grids, and that is why our problem is there. Number two, that we should all recognize the fact that the energy coming out of these luminaires here is 4% of the total that goes into making it, starting from mining and then to dispatch the coal to the thermal station and
Sir, I'm
steam
sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yes.
This is not the time to pitch solar energy. I want you to ask a specific question because the fundamental issues that are raised is people don't have money in the system to pay.
So the answer is that we should have a good combination, if not total decentralized generation. Power must be consumed where it is generated. Then all these problems will go away and people will have the money because people are paying for kerosene instead. So we should go for large mini grids and large micro.
So microgrids is the answer. Sir, please identify yourself.
Babu Babel. My question was on this big focus on solar, and you talked about probably what was levelized cost of 5 rupees a unit. Do we take the intermittency cost into equation because solar isn't available 24 hours a day? If you put 100 gigawatts of solar, and on a cloudy day or during the night, what other sources are we going to use? Those resources wouldn't be used because you'll have solar otherwise. So DISCOMs would bleed further because they will have standard assets. You know, they won't be using the normal and the other power plants that you're putting in. Has anybody done any calculation of what fuel mix would be ideal? Hydro, which initially were meant for peaking and are used as base load. And what will happen in the year when you have poor monsoon?
And just clouds.
So
no rain, only clouds. That scenario.
Yeah.
The ultimate.
So, you know, have you painted any scenario of, when we're talking about energy security, what the real cost of ownership would be? Even if we talk about rooftop solars, now rooftop solars are being put by people who have money, who are large consumers in urban areas also. So they stop paying the higher tariffs to the distribution companies and only use it when you have cloud or during peak hour when you have put extra air conditioner on. How would this work?
Great. I can also just add one more story. When you put in 100 gigawatts of solar, please put in 100 gigawatts of energy storage. Storage is the story. So storage is going to be discussed later on in this conference. But important point,
Cost
any
of,
reaction?
cost of,
Oh yeah, you
Yeah,
forgot about
transmission.
transmission. You can, I remember we did a conference about 4-5 months ago in Andhra Pradesh, and the technical director stood up and publicly said, may I just finish, saying that I don't have a grid for the 3,000 megawatts of solar that you're talking about. My grid can't take it.
and I'm quoting Paul Joskov, MIT professor, who's probably done the best study on this of levelized and intermittency cost, and still talks about gas and nuclear being, and you know, why is the country not looking at thorium-based nuclear plants, which in longer term are probably the cheapest?
The answer is we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it takes time.
So can I just quickly respond? So my point is, I think it's everything that you said is 100% valid. I haven't seen in the context of India a very thorough study done. So it is important, and you know, somebody should take it up and drive it to the ground. So valid questions. 100 gigawatts of solar is only about 20 gigawatts of energy. It's not really too much in the context of India. It looks very big. It's a good marketing big number, but given the PLFs, it doesn't produce so much energy. Just happened to have a earlier dialogue with Mr. Negi that runs the Gujarat's transmission company, and his view was, since solar is so much more predictable, if you look at the P90 and P50 different solar, it's really very predictable. As a result, it's much easier to plan for. It's not a big deal. And also, it's daytime electricity. Unlike wind, if it goes from, we're also a wind developer, very large wind developer, but in general, if it go from 3-4 p.m. to 3-4 a.m. in wind, it does become a problem after 9-10 p.m. when you don't have so much demand. It is an issue to deal. I think wind is a bigger problem from its infirm nature than solar is. The last bit is, I think there are obviously evidences all over the world. It really depends on what is the rest of the energy mix. In countries like Germany, obviously, which is large on gas, or California, which is large on gas, you're able to absorb, even in summer months in Germany, 50-60% of energy nowadays. I mean, if you just went and looked at calendar year 2015, is being produced by solar. So they've been able to absorb that. Everything you've said is real, and the work has to be done, and the economics have to be calculated. And similarly, the similar economics of climate change also have to be calculated for fossil fuel as well, right? Because we cannot take more than 2 degrees, and India has a huge role to play. So I'm not going to go there, but whatever you've said is very appropriate.
I think I'll just add one more thing to what Pashu said. Wind power, which is very much a predominant feature of the southeastern coast, Chennai, etc. In winter, and particularly in quite a few of the lean months, actually coal-back generation has had to be backed down because there is no scheduling. The entire wind power has to be scheduled, which means coal has to be backed down. And sometimes plants have to come down below even the technical minimum.
Yeah, but they have a simple solution. They just close parts of the grid, which nobody talks about. So here I'm a wind generator. I put in my 6 crores a megawatt, and guess what? I get 5-6 months window in which to recover my money. There is wind, and my turbine is there, but it's not moving because they just switched off the GY because the grid can't absorb it. But nevertheless, you need transmission capacity. You also need consumers at night, which means they're not there. So you'll have to get to storage. Microphone. No, you get large grid storage also. Utility grid storage. Yeah, small point, sir, but please say it, no, sir.
I say it, you do all this, add lots of cost to the system, and then blame DISCOMs for not recovering and paying.
Absolutely, sir. Somebody has to be blamed, no, sir. उसमें नई बात क्या है? We need a big fat villain, है ना, in every context. Okay, anything else that anyone wants to
I just want to make a comment on the German thing that you said about Germany. Utilities in Germany are in terrible shape. Yes. The market cap of German utilities have come down by less than 50% because of what you just said. And the German government subsidy in billions and billions of dollars, which they can ill afford now. It's now because they've invested, they have to use it. But it's a very bad model, which Spain followed and suffered, Australia followed and suffered. UK have just announced that they will reduce.
Paved the way for the rest of the world.
Exactly.
Made solar at 5 rupees. 3 years back, the dialogue was solar is too expensive. Now I think we're getting into real debate and asking the real questions.
Okay, there is a session on renewable, guys, and we also have a session on lunch. So I'm going to just quickly say 2 things. Recently, I was addressing a conference in Nice. in the European Commission had organized on solar, wind, and what have you, renewables. It was very interesting statistics came to my mind. France has maybe 70-80% of nuke, so it has to be on a must-run basis. And so you have a window of 20% in which the thermals sit, and then when the wind comes and everything else comes, France can't absorb it. So they go and quietly export it to Germany and others and whoever else they want in the European Union. The point I'm trying to make is, he just talked about, Pashupati talked about wind, the uncertainty. The fact is it's infirm power. The fact is there's no way of predicting what's going on. But I happened to visit the National Load Dispatch Center 2 weeks ago, and I just looked at the wind patterns. Mr. Soni was kind enough to allow me to sit on the control room and see the patterns. Wind in India is predictable. It starts at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, finishes off at 4, so it misses the morning peak, it misses the evening peak. Then it picks up again somewhere around 10:30, 11 at night and goes crazy till about 3:34 in the morning when nobody wants power, and then it goes off again. So, moral of the story is that you have to find a way to fit in. And when you try and keep saying that you have to mainstream renewable energy in the Indian context, what is actually being said is you have to schedule it in 15-minute time blocks. And you have this whole bunch of guys who will tell us, believe that we can predict it, we can forecast it, there's a whole mechanism in place. But I'm not very sure that's what mainstreaming is all about from a system operating point of view. Because it goes like this, and I'll do a little bit of mimicry of what's happening. Okay, thermal 1, back down, wind is picking up, back down, 15-minute time blocks, please note. And 4-5 minutes later, the wind goes up higher. Okay, second thermal, start backing down, please. Start backing down, instruction go. And then all of a sudden the wind drops. Hey, hello, thermal, ramp up, release the hydros, ramp up. This goes on. The guys go crazy. I think they need psychological treatment in the systems. They're going crazy. So, on that happy note, ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big round of applause to this lovely panel. And I'm glad to have regulators, more than just power. We also had, I want to thank Reserve Bank especially talking about stress hazard. So you brought a little bit of cheer to us. Thank you so much.